would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey.
Welcome back, Psychos, to the second episode of our all new podcast, Terror on the Tube. My name is Christopher Pelton. I am the purveyor of nightmares and nostalgia, and I'm here to talk about everybody's favorite genre of television, horror shows. The idea for the beginning of this show was to go back and take a look at shows from the 50s and 60s, all the horror, sci fi, thrillers type of shows that existed during that period of time. I grew up in the 80s and 90s, which was the height of syndicated horror. We had the Nightmare on Elm Street series, we had Friday the 13th series, we had Tales from the Crypt, we had Tales from the Dark Side, we had Monsters, we had reruns of The Twilight Zone. There was so much great TV on, especially late at night for horror fans during the late 80s and in the early 90s. So my goal here is to go back and take a look at those shows and cover them. But I'm also going to take a look at more modern things with the advent of cable, and now we are living in a golden age of television. Horror has come back with a vengeance. There have been a number of great new horror shows released over the last 5 or 6 years. And one of the ones I want to talk about today is a brand new show that just debuted last year, end of last year, on the Travel Channel of all places, which I did not expect to find a fictional based horror series on the Travel Channel, but it's on there, and I was shocked to see that it was excellent. The name of the show is Urban Legend, and as you can imagine, based on that title, every episode is a new take on a classic urban legend. The episode that I'm talking about today, the one that I just finished watching again for the second or possibly third time, is one called The Bite. Now, The Bite is a classic urban legend. Anybody who's familiar with the genre knows the story. I'm just going to give you a brief overview of the episode. I don't want to go into too many details because, quite honestly, I don't want to spoil it for anybody. But The Bite is the second episode of this new series from the Travel Channel. It is being produced by Eli Roth, who personally I'm hit or miss with his films. I respect what he does as a director. I'm not the biggest fan of all of his work, but I certainly admire him for his involvement in the horror community and what he brings to the table. So let's talk about this episode real quick. This is The Bite, and it stars basically two people you've probably never heard of: Rodrigo Massa, who plays Ben, and Robin Gallup, who plays Rose. Now, Ben and Rose are a couple. I'm not sure. I don't think they ever clarify whether or not they're married in the episode or not. But we start off the episode with the two of them sitting at this beautiful beach resort, enjoying a nice sunny day on their vacation. And the resort itself is a typical vacation resort. I'm sure you've seen commercials over the years for places like Sandals or Club Med. I might be dating myself with that reference, but it's a beach resort. You go there, all expenses, everything included. They take care of your whole stay. It's a good time. This particular beach resort has but one rule, very simple rule: do not leave the compound. There's a reason for this, and they go into details further in the episode, and you'll find out exactly why that is there. But the point is, do not leave the compound. So, one of the very first things that our loving couple does after being at the resort for a day or two and finding themselves engaged in a conversation with not only a fellow guest, but with an employee of the resort as well, they're told about a secret beach, which is about 20-minute walk away from the resort or away from the secret compound. It's a beautiful private beach. They speak very highly of it. But again, with the one rule of the resort being don't leave the resort, one has to wonder why exactly people are being sent to this beach. So we cut back from commercial break and we go to the beach and we find that Our lead Ben is in the water. He's splashing around, having a good old time, and Rose is sleeping on the beach. And then we see a nasty little creepy crawly coming out of the sand. It is a spider of some variety, although I believe it's a fictional spider. I don't think they based it on any actual spiders. It comes out of the ground on the beach and it crawls under the blanket as we see Rose go to sleep. Now, that's where we end as far as the beach. The next scene, again, after the commercial break, they come back and they are now at their apartment. They're back home, and Rose has got a bite on her cheek, and it looks like a mosquito bite or something, but there are two very small bites very close together. And she's concerned about them, and she is trying to tell Ben, hey, something's not right here. I feel off, this isn't what it should be. She's been very paranoid about bed bugs the entire time, based on negative experience on a previous trip where they did bring home some bed bugs. So she's been very on top of making sure that everything was clean. She vacuumed out the suitcases. She wanted to make sure there was nobody lingering that shouldn't have been there. Unfortunately for her, it would appear that the creepy crawly on the beach actually may have taken a bite out of her before they left. As the next couple of days go by, the bite marks on Rose's face are getting bigger and bigger and grosser. And her behavior starts to alter. She starts to become very abrupt. She gets very snappy with Ben when he's asking if there's anything he can do to help, making a suggestion. Um, a visit to the doctor's office doesn't go particularly well. The doctor is unfamiliar with the bite. He's never seen anything like it. He refers Rose to a dermatologist who, unfortunately, isn't going to be able to see her for another week. So Rose goes back home. The bites increasingly get worse. She wakes up in the middle of the night one night, and this is where it all really starts to go to hell. She wanders into the bathroom. The bite on her face, the lump on her face from the bites, has now quadrupled in size. It's a giant, pouchy extension of her cheek, and sticking out from the middle of it is what appears to be a hair. She makes her way into the bathroom. She grabs a pair of tweezers and she yanks on the hair, and then hundreds of baby spiders come bursting out of her face. Now, you would think that that would be the highlight of the story, that would be the kicker, and the story ends there. Holy shit, this woman just had a bunch of spiders bust out of her face. That's only about halfway through the story. The second half of the story gets even darker. Again, I don't want to go into the details because I don't want to spoil it for you. It is a unique take on a classic story, and what I've come to find about this series is it is very good at that. Another thing that has been very impressive to me about the series is that they don't really hold back on the gore. I mean, there's nothing like overly excessive. We're not talking about, Art the Clown or Terrifier, or, we're not talking Texas Chainsaw Massacre or anything like that. But there is a surprising amount of gore and blood for a show that is, again, being aired on the Travel Channel of all places. So I have to applaud them for letting Eli Roth and his crew come in and make this show, and not restrict them in the way that so many of horror shows have been restricted in the past of what you can and can't show on television. So the show itself wraps up with a very, very nasty ending. It's a tight 45 minutes or so. The last 7 to 8 minutes of each episode include an interview between Eli Roth and the filmmakers from the particular episode to give you a little bit of an idea of what they were thinking about and why they love and chose those particular stories. So definitely, in this one, I would say 4 out of 5 stars. It is a cable television show, so it definitely is allowed to have a bit more of an edge. As a whole, the series is pretty good. There's 1 or 2 episodes that miss a little, but not terribly. There's no flat out bad episodes. Episode 2, though, The Bite, I give 4 out of 5 stars. They really didn't hold back. There's a few bits of the story that could have been, in my opinion, tightened up a little bit just for clarification purposes, but it does involve, a mystery. There's a lot of stuff that was going on in the background that ultimately leads to what I said to be a very, very dark ending. So if you haven't seen it and you have the Travel Channel or you have Hulu, it's streaming on Hulu right now. It is called Urban Legend. Again, it just launched last year. I'm hoping very much for a second season because this first season was really solid television. So that is going to wrap me up for today for this episode of Terror on the Tube. We will be back in 2 weeks with another show. Might be an older show. I'm going to try to mix it up some, do some classic TV like we started with The Twilight Zone, and now we're talking about Urban Legend. Next week we'll see what motivates me to watch. But there's so much great TV out there, so many great horror shows out there from the 50s all the way up until today. So if you are into horror, definitely take the time to check this out. Urban Legend, again, from the Travel Channel, top shelf stuff. And I will see everybody in 2 weeks. Thanks a lot for stopping by.